Now, the latest from ITV News Meridian with Sangeeta Barbara and Fred Dinage.
Good evening and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the south. The hospital blunder that cost this pensioner from Hayling Island her life. Her daughter says it should never have happened.
If he'd had that blood, she would be alive today.
Finding a cure for cancer. Southampton gets funding for the first research centre of its kind in the UK.
Food for thought. Is your family throwing away hundreds of pounds of groceries every year? What you need to know about best before dates.
And tank wars. A 62-ton challenge for these Wiltshire soldiers. But why? Good evening. The death of a pensioner from Hampshire was caused by neglect and a spelling error by staff at the hospital she was being treated in. That's the verdict of an inquest.
Irmgard Cooper from Hayling Island was having a heart operation at Northwick Park in London, but her name was misspelt. That led to vital blood supplies being sent back and her dying in theatre.
And her daughter now says she's lost faith in the NHS. Ria Chatterjee has our report.
Irmgard Cooper bled to death in hospital.
In what state did you find your mother in intensive care?
I could see a pool of blood on the floor. It was running off the table. I went over to her. I took her hand. It was ice cold. I knew at that point there was no way they could retrieve the situation. Horror, shock. The staff were running around madly.
Mrs. Cooper was in the middle of an operation to repair a bulge in the main artery to her heart. The first error, a spelling mistake in her name on the blood sample. It was sent back.
At that time, the anaesthetist should have ordered more blood. He didn't. The surgeon in this procedure gives a 15-minute warning before he's going to declamp an artery. This is a time when really they have time to say, I have the bloods, I have the products, everything's ready to go. If he'd had that blood, she would be alive today.
At the inquest, a coroner found Mrs. Cooper had died from neglect. He said her death was avoidable and described the lack of blood provision as a gross failing. The chief executive of the trust apologised to the family in a statement. She also said they've done a full internal investigation and put systems in place to ensure this type of thing doesn't happen again.
Is that enough for you?
I felt it was just a throwaway line.
Lorraine is now working with her solicitor to get some kind of recompense.
I think it's very distressing to have to sit there and listen to evidence and be told that this death was entirely avoidable and that if proper procedure had been carried out, her mother would be alive today. I think it's incredibly traumatic and it's something that no family or no individual should have to deal with in this day and age.
Lorraine's 92-year-old father is finding it extremely difficult to cope. They had to wait 7 months after the death to hold Mrs. Cooper's funeral. Ria Chatterjee, ITV News.
In other news, 5,000 bottles of milk were thrown across the road this morning when the side of a milk lorry opened. It happened at 3:30 a.m. on the Bursledon Road. It caused long delays as 1,000 litres of milk was cleared up.
Police want to trace this man following the rape of a woman in Brighton. The 18-year-old victim was seen with a man in the Coalition nightclub last September. She later woke up in a flat near Brighton Station.
An investigation has found a lack of maintenance was to blame for a car deck collapsing on a Whitelink ferry. 4 people were injured last summer. The replacement of the steel ropes was overdue.
It is sadly a disease that is likely to touch all of our lives in some way. But in the last 10 years, cancer-related deaths have fallen. A big reason is advances in detection, diagnosis and treatment.
Well, Well, the University of Southampton has just received a grant which will mean it can build a new research centre, the first of its kind in the UK.
Gary Swain's been to meet one family affected by cancer and the scientists working to find a cure.
A game of hide and seek with our camera, but 3-year-old Phelan wasn't shy for long. We were soon playing a boisterous game. His vitality a joy to his father, who just 18 months ago was told his son had an aggressive type of cancer and only a 50% chance of survival.
I couldn't hold back the tears. It was very, very disturbing. It was a hopeless situation at the beginning.
The white arrows point to cancer cells, the pink arrow to a single killer T cell. In this speeded-up video, watch how it attacks, eats and destroys cancer cells. This is immunotherapy, a revolutionary new treatment which saved Phelan. And the breakthrough is the work of scientists from the University of Southampton.
So what we have here is cancer cells that have been treated with various different drugs that we're testing. We're actually seeing that patients, up to about 20-25% of patients, actually becoming cancer-free, whereas typically they'd have a survival of maybe up to 6 months, and these people are going away completely free of cancer.
Phelan had chemotherapy, surgery and a stem cell transplant, but still a couple of spots of neuroblastoma remained. Immunology harnessed the power of his own immune system to kill his cancer. This is the £25 million state-of-the-art Centre for Cancer Immunology, due to open at the General Hospital in 2017. It will bring world-leading cancer scientists under one roof and accelerate research into this groundbreaking treatment. Phelan is doing well after taking part in the immunotherapy trial, a face of hope on World Cancer Day.
He's amazing. I would say he's crossed the line, and our wish and hope has come true.
After a £4.5 million grant from Solent Local Enterprise Partnership, 3/4 of the money has been raised. Donations still needed to save more lives from cancer. Kerry Swain, ITV News.
Plans for a new multi-million-pound leisure centre and hundreds of new homes have been revealed for Hove's Seafront.
The King Alfred Centre has been standing since the 1930s, but a council-backed scheme could now replace it, as Andy Dickinson reports.
They are the kind of sports and leisure facilities any city would be proud of, but they cost £40 million, money Brighton Council simply doesn't have. Their solution, 560 homes built above, on prime real estate, overlooking Hove's famous promenade.
The King Alfred Leisure Centre is 90 years old. It's long since past its use-by date. It's costing an awful lot for the council to keep it going. So now is the time we have to face up to replacing what is much loved but really is worn out.
The developers of the new King Alfred scheme were chosen just 10 days ago. Youth charity The Star Trust leading an initiative that would see the 1930s building demolished and replaced by towers up to 18 stories high. 20% of the homes will be deemed affordable, but local residents may feel they've heard all this before. The last time this site was earmarked for development, the world-famous architect Frank Gehry was involved. Brad Pitt was even rumoured to want an apartment, but as that project grew in size and height, the public turned against it. Gehry's avant-garde designs were notably higher and included 200 more flats. And at £200 million, this new scheme is significantly cheaper.
It's hard to have an opinion until we're allowed to see something, and this whole thing has been wrapped in cotton wool and double wrapped in secrecy.
This has to happen. It has to. You've got to have a facility here which is good for the community. But you know, tall and beautiful is better than small and ugly.
These designs will now be consulted on before a planning application is submitted early next year. The new sports centre opening as early as 2020. Andy Dickinson, ITV News, Hove.
You're watching ITV News here in the Meridian region. Coming up.
Are we addicted to technology? The gadget-obsessed family challenged to give up their devices. We'll show you how they got on.
And if you've still got your gadgets, for more on all of our stories, head to our website itv.com/Meridian. Our telephone number's on the screen, or get in touch via Facebook or Twitter.
Well, the promise was to revolutionise our railways, but 20 years on, there are claims privatisation has been a disaster, and tonight there are new calls for our railways to be taken back into public hands.
Well, that's nonsense, say our biggest operator, who insists it has transformed services with more trains now on time than ever before.
Well, South West Trains and Great Western were the first two put in the hands of the private sector on February the 4th, 1996.
Well, one thing is for certain, more people than ever are using the service. In 1996, there were 300,000 South West train passengers a day. Now it's 630,000, up 112%.
Commuter fares set by the government have gone up. The annual season ticket from Basingstoke to Waterloo has risen from £2,645 to £4,196, and that's a 70% rise.
And the number of trains on time was 88% 20 years ago. But by 2002, it was a dismal 70%, with almost 1 in 3 late. Today, it's better at 90%.
The number of services has also increased from 1,580 to 1,689 trains a day.
So, has it made the impact it was meant to? Our transport correspondent Mike Pearce has followed the story every step of the way and has spoken exclusively to the boss of South West Trains. He sent this report from Basingstoke Station.
Well, of course, privatisation was controversial right from the start and remains so today. In fact, campaigners even went to the High Court to try to stop it, but the government was determined, and it was the end of the line for British Rail. Privatised at last. Today, commuters from the south were the first to travel on trains operated by the private sector for 48 years. 1996 and the launch of a new privatised era for the railways. But it didn't all go to plan. South West Trains got rid of too many drivers to save money and then found they didn't have enough to run the service. There were strikes and claims of large profits. But the company say things did change for the better. £1 billion worth of new trains and improved stations among them. Tim Shoveler started his career as a guard at Guildford 25 years ago. Now he's the managing director. We have high fares, we have late trains. Privatisation hasn't worked.
The fares themselves are now covering the cost of running the railway and covering the cost of investment. So that's relieved that burden on the taxpayer. The taxpayer contributes nothing to this railway. That's a really big change. In terms of overcrowded trains, yes they are. We've more than doubled the number of people that we carry. And that's a success. We know the really big challenge is to do that in increasing levels of comfort. So whether that's Wi-Fi or just 150 carriages we ordered just last summer that will soon be joining our network later into 2017.
How do you think things have changed or not over those 20 years?
I think they've changed a bit. I think it's exactly the same.
I think they've added more carriages, etc. So comfort and schedule is generally okay. Cost definitely is a concern.
You have trouble finding a seat, but yeah, I enjoy the experience. It's all part of it.
Staff say there were real concerns about privatisation.
In terms of a private company taking over what was the BR of those days, people were worried about their jobs. But actually it ended up being totally different.
But the unions say it's been a disaster.
People are in business to make a profit. Instead of reinvesting that back into the infrastructure, back into the rolling stock and the staff to make sure people are safe on trains and on stations, they're taking that money and paying it out in dividends to the investors.
I think there was a lot the private companies had to learn when they took over the rail industry, and that learning period there were a few mistakes made, and it took a while to get up and running, and there were some bad days, and there are still a few bad days for customers, but overall I believe the service is improving.
What do you say to critics who would say privatisation has just led to fat cat companies creaming off the profits?
Well, you know, people would have seen the figures that are published that show that the average train company margin is about 2.5% to 3%, which is a very, very small margin and far less than most companies would be able to survive on. The fact that we've got an increasing number of people wanting to travel with us, I think demonstrates that the services we offer, by and large, do very well.
I think it's fair to say that some things have improved, like the trains and stations, but there are still concerns over overcrowding and the number of trains that run late, and in particular fares. Now, of course, fare levels are set by the government, and that was meant to stop passengers being ripped off by the private companies.
Pierce with that report. Meanwhile, the government announced today just 2 companies are in the race to run the company from next June. Existing operator Stagecoach and First Group, who run Great Western services. Both companies will now need to demonstrate how they will deliver better journeys for passengers. A decision due later this year.
Now, did you know the average person checks their phone more than 85 times a day?
How do you know that?
Well, I do know that, but do you know what? I'm guilty. I bet I probably do it 100 times
Well,
a day.
here's something to shock you, because if you're a parent, listen to this. By the age of 7, a child will have spent almost 1 whole year of their life staring at a screen. Incredible.
It is. Well, smartphones obviously have their advantages, but something as a nation we're addicted to them. And a bar in Bournemouth has banned them altogether. Emma Wilkinson has more.
Meet the Forrest family. Technology dominates their lives.
Is anybody watching this?
What is it? Texting each other in the house is not uncommon, and dinner times are often spent staring at screens. And they're not alone. The average person checks their phone 85 times a day. Half of us admit to feeling anxious at the idea of being without it. Some experts think too much technology affects us psychologically and physically.
One of the big concerns around screen technology is to do with the kind of light it emits. It's a high content of blue light, which we think suppresses the hormone melatonin, which is the sleep hormone. Also, being hunched over a screen all day does have an impact on your posture. In addition, screens can have a major effect on your eyes and your eyesight.
The Forrest family have been challenged to give up everything with a screen for a week. A daunting task for them, but elsewhere such bans are more permanent, like at this bar in Bournemouth.
I wanted to create an environment where people could go out and not see other people texting across the table. It's about people communicating with each other verbally rather than via electronic devices.
But are the gadgets themselves really the problem?
The technology itself isn't to blame. What's needed there is for people to regulate it and for people to use it sensibly. And I think it's increasingly the public's job to make informed choices.
For the Forrest family, a day out together without technology had its challenges and its benefits.
I had to call the place where we're going to find out the address of where it is and the opening times. It's just so weird. It's like going back years and years and years, speaking to people.
It's good when you just come out and not having to think about, oh, I need to check my phone and stuff, and just coming out and socialising a bit.
Collectively, we're staring at our screens more than ever. It's a form of consumption, and more experts think too much will put us at risk. Emma Wilkinson, ITV News.
And you can see more on this on the Tonight programme, Addicted to Your Smartphone at 7:30 here on ITV.
Now, a new campaign aims to highlight the huge amount of food households right across the south are wasting every year.
Figures show the average family of 4 throws out £700 worth of food, which is still good to eat, while a third of us don't understand what a best before date actually means.
And one chef who cooks with only surplus ingredients says using leftovers can save us money. Matt Price went to meet him.
And this is what I'm going to use for the mixture.
Professional chef Shane Jordan hates nothing more than wasting food. He's made a career out of using leftovers, as research shows a quarter of us are throwing out produce that's perfectly safe to eat.
Food waste is anything that you don't use, basically. So if you're cutting a vegetable or a fruit, that would be wasted food. But you can recycle that food, but most people put that in the black bin. So the key thing for me is to recycle your food or to make a meal from it if it's edible.
The study shows the average family's wasting a total of £700 a year on food, which could be eaten. 54% of us would choose to buy new food rather than using what we already have at home, and a third of us don't really understand what best before actually means.
Well, best before is all about the quality. So if you had a sandwich, then the lettuce might wilt, or the bread might not be as soft, but it's still fine to eat. There's no health warning. And used by is basically a health warning saying if you used it past this date, there will be health implications. I'm doing a tester one at the moment just to see that it's not too hot.
Today marks the start of the Perfectly Good campaign, encouraging us all to make the most of leftovers. And it seems the advice is welcome in Brighton.
I'm one of the world's worst for doing that sort of thing.
Why?
Maybe because it's in the fridge and I tend to forget about it.
Myself and my partner are pretty keen on finishing as much food as possible in the interest of saving money.
What do? You keep it in the fridge for some time, you need to throw it away.
One person's rubbish is another's treasure, and there's nothing quite so true for Dan Cluddery. His website is the largest online retailer of food and drink, approaching its best before date. His 50 staff helping to ship out cut-price goodies to over 1 million customers across Europe.
Best before is common sense. When you buy an apple and it hasn't got a date on, you use your own common sense as to should I eat this or not, and it's exactly the same. You know, like if it was rotting, if it smelt funny, if it didn't look right. Best before is about how things change over time. So is the pop as fizzy? You know, is the crisp as crunchy?
This is the curried pancakes.
Using leftovers prevents millions of tonnes of waste heading for landfill sites. Shane's meal, made using old vegetables and potato peelings, has not only saved him money, but help the environment too. Matt Price, ITV News.
Well, you've been telling us about how much food you throw away, and Dave Fisher from Totton says very little. We never had sell-by dates when we were young. We never had a problem. Well said, Dave.
And Hazel Bennett from New Milton writes, I was brought up to use what I buy, and I do. Too many people these days overbuy. I'd agree with that.
Jill Inman says, I never throw anything away. My dogs eat most of our leftovers. Lucky dogs. Thank you to everyone who got in touch.
Now, soldiers are put through some of the most rigorous training on the planet, pushing themselves to the limit in the toughest terrains.
Yes, but troops based at Tidworth Garrison in Wiltshire have set themselves an almighty challenge, which they hope will put them in the record books.
Yep, soldiers from the Royal Tank Regiment have put their all into pulling a Challenger 2 battle tank weighing in at 62 tonnes. Together, they managed to drag the tank 100 metres at approximately the same speed it moved while fighting at the Somme a century ago.
Judges are now deciding if they set a world record and will announce their findings next month.
Very difficult. Once you beat the inertia, it does get moving, but then you need to keep that going, and like I said, for 100 metres it's quite hard. They should be proud of themselves. It was a hard pull and they did really well on it.
We needed the bounce and movement to get it going, but once the momentum was actually rolling, the lads managed to do like a steady pull throughout, which obviously made the vehicle travel a lot faster, which made it a lot easier.
And why did you do it?
Well, we want to break a record, don't we? We want to make history for the regiment, basically.
Well
Fantastic.
done to them. Well, we've got some weather muscle now. Here he is, it's Simon.
Yeah, I think you'll find it flaps still at this time of the year. But,
it's quite a tiny muscle.
Yeah, not much. Anyway, we obviously had the wettest December on record, and January, as we revealed yesterday, was a bit damper than it should have been as well. But good news if you like fungus. Loads of it keeps cropping up in my Meridian weather at ITV.com inbox. That's the stuff Trevor Cridland found in Tame, which kind of looks like you would expect fungus to
Pretty common or garden.
Yeah, more or less like a mushroom. But have a look at this that Robert H. Ollie sent in. That there is your jelly ear fungus he found on a fell tree stump at Woodland at the Reading University White Knight campus on Saturday. Really does look like an ear, doesn't it?
Nothing like an ear at all.
If you're a rugby player, that's what your ear looks like. A variation on a theme. Look, and Dave Illman in Sussex found this. That's orange jelly fungus growing on a gorse bush near Goodwood. And also this as well, look, in Slindon. That there is your scarlet elf cup fungus, about 4 centimetres across. And those little cups like the rain, which is why they're doing very well. So keep an eye out if you see any more for any more. We'd love to see the pictures, and there's more on my blog on the website.
Simon's great, isn't he? He really is a
fun guy.
Bomb.
First time this year.
Here's your forecast, Simon Parkin.
That's us driving on, us driving off in France, and us outside a chateau.
Driving to Europe. Eurotunnel Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Top job by Dave Potter in Worthing, who managed to spot the International Space Station thanks to a tip-off from us and some nice clear skies. Tonight, 7:29 in a southwesterly direction, and you might just see it, but there might be a fair amount of cloud around. Certainly cloud thickening up overnight, but very mild temperatures. We got up to around 14 degrees in parts of Sussex today. Overnight tonight, we're looking at lows of around 8 or 9. Might be an odd spot of drizzle here and there, but a lot of dry weather to wake up to tomorrow morning. But a fairly gloomy day. Less chance of seeing those breaks in the cloud, so mainly it's an overcast story, and again there could be a bit of patchy light rain here and there. Winds a bit stronger than today, taking the edge off those temperatures, but still 11-12 degrees is pretty good going. 12 is 54 in Fahrenheit. Your high tide times, you can see Poole Harbour 5 past 5 in the morning, then around 7:15 in the evening. And then Saturday, already a Met Office weather warning in place because we're going to see some heavy rain. Could be more than an inch falling in some places. Plus, we've got the added bonus of gale force winds blowing along the coast as well.
Eurotunnel Le Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Before we go, a quick word about our Last Word programme tonight with more. Here's Phil Hornby.
Yes, I'm at the European Parliament in Strasbourg in France, at the heart of the European Union, where one question has been on everyone's lips this week. When it comes to Le Crunch, should we stay or should we go?
Should I stay or should I go?
For tonight's Last Word, we brought together 4 of our region's MEPs here in the Strasbourg Parliament.
I know you don't want the Remain case to be heard.
Forgive me for talking while you interrupt.
I'm not even having this argument with you. You stoop very low.
Well, as you can see, it was pretty lively stuff. You can watch it on our website. You can also watch it on ITV tonight after the late news.
In just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary and Mark. From us, though, take care. See you soon.
See you later. Bye-bye.